A lot of what I'm going to say, I think, is going to connect up to what we've been talking about this morning, particularly about mission of education, because I think at the core of all this conversation is we're misoriented, fundamentally misoriented, in terms of what the intention of education is. Right? And the other thing that we haven't been doing very well, I think, is bringing the participation in. That it's not just a brain, it's not just a machine, it's a human being, and the being has to participate. And it's the quality and health of that participation that has to be, I think, the kind of central organizing principle. Let me start that process of kind of our descent into this conversation today with this little piece on learning itself.
The Neurons to Neighborhoods report was very emphatic in stating that children are born ready to learn. We don't have to make them ready to learn. We don't have to teach them how to learn. They are kind of wired from the beginning to learn, and they're wired to experience and to master the world around them.
What is important about education is not that somebody knows the current science, because the current science might be wrong, but it's that somebody knows how to learn about new science and adapt to do something that they had never even thought about doing when they were in school. That's the key element.
So, I mean, on one hand, you've got somebody who's overseeing the gathering of what we have on neuroscience of early childhood development, saying that, in essence, we come into the world born learning-oriented, wired to differentiate and disambiguate and extend our presence into the worlds we inhabit. We come that way. On the other hand, we've got somebody who is sitting at the Hoover Institute studying education. I've also talked to other people in similar positions around the country who are studying kind of the macro dynamics of education, saying, what is it that makes education really work? And what he's come to is basically that what we need to do is be producing people that are learning-oriented. In other words, so we're born learning-oriented, and the purpose of education isn't so much to teach us any particular thing as it is to get us through the process able to learn in ways that we can't be educated about at the time we're being educated. So both of these two things. Now the difference between them, even though there seems to be such significant agreement between the two, is that one is talking about natural organic learning. We are wired, we come into the world with this kind of proprioceptive, self-sensing feedback that can differentiate and allow us to disambiguate our way into being more present in the world. We come with that. But we don't come with any such ability to be able to differentiate and extend ourselves into the artificial, cultural, technological world. And the purpose of education is to be able to connect that kind of natural internal learning orientation and make it able to learn in this artificial world. But for the most part, teachers, parents, educators, we're kind of oblivious to the difference between a natural learning context and an artificial learning context. And without it, I don't know how you could possibly organize education effectively. And there's no place better to go into, a lens into those differences than in understanding the code itself. So backdrop real quickly, our perspective is that everything depends on learning, our physical health, our emotional health. Learning isn't just the process of utility for the acquisition of knowledge, skills, and experience. Learning is the central dynamic through which we become human beings. And it's not only connected to each and all of us as individuals, but it's connected to everything about us collectively as well. So our mission and what we do with our work at the Children of the Code Project and other things is what we call stewarding the health of learning. And that's the thought bomb kind of at the end. One other thing I'd ask for you to think about as I proceed on with this and into the Children of the Code conversation is that is to think about this question. What happens to children who develop a pre-conscious emotional aversion to the feeling of confusion? Talk about motivation. It's not just pumping up motivation. It's making sure that they don't become emotionally motivated to avoid learning, which is, when you deconstruct it, the #1 learning disability in this country. More than everything else we keep track of put together. Again, what happens? What happens when at an early age you develop an aversion to how bad it feels to feeling confused? And it starts to operate just like reading itself, faster than you're even aware of. It's underneath your consciousness, and it's causing your consciousness to avoid doing things that will cause you to feel confused because you don't want that shame. What happens to your life learning trajectory? So the point in all this is that we're not just talking about a machine when we talk about this brain. We're talking about somebody inside of it, an inhabitant, somebody who has feelings. And those feelings, the emotions, the affect, is actually regulating what they're able to pay attention to, how long they're able to pay attention to. And once that emotional circuitry doesn't want to be paying attention, you can do all you want in the classroom, and you've got to fight against that. And in fact, most of the kids that are struggling are no longer struggling just with the original issues. They're become learning disabled by the emotional avoidance they have to wanting to get anywhere near the confusion. So I wish I had more time. That's it for now.
This final panel was titled Transformation. The idea was that having gone through the other panels that we would have some sense of, or at least have the wherewithal to start thinking about where to go. And Paula particularly did not like the word translation, which I think other people have said. And so this is essentially a where do we go from here kind of meeting. Okay, David Bolton, you have to say something.
You know, I've been in this space for about 20 years, really concerned about the same issues that we've been talking about today. And I've come to believe that there is this movement going on, starting to move more towards the medicine model, right? But one of the things that goes on for medicine that doesn't go on for education, that's kind of one of its organizing principles, is above all else, do no harm. And that one of the monsters missing in this conversation is how much of our learning is being disabled by our learning. And that rather than having all of our learning, science, and research connected to the educational objective, that the Sputnik project and the NCF project and the kind of national thing that I would most advocate is the creation of the kind of National Institute for the Study and Prevention of Acquired Learning Disabilities. That somebody needs to be looking out for that side, kind of independent of all the agenda to push what we think people should be learning. And let that not be subordinate to the entire educational mechanism, but a parallel informing loop to all of this.